Step 2 is an invitation for you to come to AA to believe that a power greater than yourself will restore your sanity. And so then the miracles start to happen.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Greetings from Studio AA, deep here in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of our old friend. I'm not saying he's old, but you know what I mean. He's been on the show a lot. Of our friend Reno John that you heard at the beginning of this here episode number 388. And believe me, you are going to hear so much more from him in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is brought to you by Laura and Tim. And you ask yourself, what exactly did Laura and Tim do? Well, they visited our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Laura and Tim. This here episode is coming right out to you'uns. And I gotta say, when I said that this time, I don't think this has ever come up in my little pea brain before, but I said, what do you think? You may ask yourself, and I started singing to myself in my head that, that Talking Head song. I can't even remember the name of it, but he says, you may ask yourself, right? I think he says, you may ask yourself, is this not my beautiful house? You may ask yourself, is not this my beautiful home? And then he goes, same as it ever was, same as it ever was. For those of you who know that song by the Talking Heads, you will know what I am referring to, but that's the song that kind of started going off in my head. Nonetheless, as usual, I go on little tangents here. And I kind of been giving you a up-to-date, week-by-week blow. Well, maybe that's not the word to use. Description of, I don't even want to, I'll just stop there. There's a couple different ways I could go on that, but I've been giving you a week by week description of this, this gum surgery that I got. And by the way, folks, I got the stitches out this week, but my lips are still black and blue. This has been quite a little ordeal. And I got to tell you, just before I started to record this here my friend Brad W, texted me. He's out somewhere, I guess, listening to the podcast. And he says, I'm listening to the new episode right now. And I'm also listening to the Icky Paw. No, wait a sec. This is what he says. This was what he wrote. It says, gum surgery, ? Did you accidentally share your toothbrush with someone else rather than an episode of Sober Speak? He says, I hope your recovery is going well. I may be way off the date since I'm driving around Indiana. Well, hello, Brad in Indiana, for work and listening to episodes of the podcast. So what what he's referring there to is a lot of times at the end of these episodes, I'll say, hey, now remember, we don't want you to share your toothbrush, but we would love for you to share an episode. So, hey, kind of worked in a little sober speak humor into that. I really like that. So thanks for the text, Brad. But anyway, all right. What do we have going on here? You know what? I think I may have shared. No. I got it. Yeah, I don't know if I shared this or not, but just in case I didn't, and this could have been on last week, but for people who contributed, Audrey, Ian, and Mary Lynn as well, just in case I accidentally left you off the list. Sometimes I get a little confused myself, but nonetheless, let's go on to a little bit of Reno John. And here we go. Reno John. Step 2. Reno is from Dallas, Texas, and he has been sober for 43 years. He's done so much service work for AA over that period of time, and I'm so thankful that he carves time out of his schedule to come over here with me in person to Studio AA and spend time with me, because as the result of that, I have the opportunity and the privilege of sharing these episodes with you. Once again, Reno, thank you so much. As you'll hear on the episode, I take Reno John off on a few tangents during the interview. We discuss step 2, but we also talk about the ups and downs as his life as a circuit speaker in Alcoholics Anonymous. We talk about what the word, quote, legacy means to John. We discussed the one and only, the dearly departed at the big meeting in the sky, Mr. Clancy I. John discusses how step 2 is not very complicated. And if you will pardon, please, pardon me, the hard stop at the end of this episode. And we will pick up with Reno John talking about step 3 on the next episode. And so I'm going to skip some listener feedback this week, but I do want to get, actually, I say we're going to skip it, but I'm going to put one piece of listener feedback here on the beginning of the episode. And it is Elaine who writes in. She says, "Hi, John. I am 87. And John, I don't want to think about another night without my sober speak." Well, God bless you, Elaine. Thank you so much. And she says, a sober since August 25th of 1980. And she says, thank you so much, especially for the Norm Alfie recordings. He was one of the first circuit speakers I ever heard when I got sober. Thank you, John, for so much for the podcast and everything you do. Even your sometimes silly bantering is welcome and is becoming so familiar. I just returned from one of my middle of the night trips, and I'm ready for your voice again. Well, I don't know where you're going on your middle of the night trips, Miss Elaine, but I'm so glad that you wrote in. And then she put like several emojis here, a football emoji. Oh, and I know why she put that football emoji there, and I can tell you probably where she's from. Well, at least I know which football team she works she roots for, and the reason I could tell that is from her email alias. I'm not going to give that out on the air, obviously, but I could tell who she roots for. And she's got a big heart smiley face, a big smiley face with the sunglasses on there, and 3 prayer hand things. So thank you, Miss Elaine at 87. God bless you. I hope I'm listening to not my podcast, but other podcasts when I get to be 87, and God bless you. At this point, I would generally say enjoy Reno John, and we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this episode, but we will not have listener feedback at the end of this episode, and but you can still enjoy John. And if you need to Reno John, and if you need to reach out to me, I'm at John, John, at soberspeak.com. If you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at SoberSpeak, all one word. And if you want to join us in the super secret Facebook group, you can go to your Facebook application and search up Sober Speak Secret Group, ask for admission into the group, and we will let you in. Anyway, enough of my nonsense. Enjoy Reno John. Okay, everybody, so we are back again. We're back. We're back in the saddle again. Yes. Okay, so last time we got together, we basically covered, I would say, step one. We talked about all kinds of things, John. We talked about the distorted perception of reality. We talked about your time in Reno. We talked about how your thin blood was a problem.
That's it.
In Utah.
Yeah. High altitude drinking. Gets you in trouble.
We talked about, just so many things, right? So we decided to go ahead and just schedule some more time back here to come in and have you continue your thoughts. You know, basically, I think we're going to go with step two, but I don't know. We would just make this organic. We'll see where it goes. But I do have one question before you get started. So and if you don't want to talk about this, I'm fine, but I still remember the line that was so funny to me. We had a conversation on the phone.
Uh-huh.
And you were talking about your surgery that you had to get done, and Danny Brown telling you that you were going to be able to knock the bark.
The what?
No. Okay, so you had some. Danny Brown told you that you were going to be able to knock bark off of the tree.
Oh, yeah.
And so we talked a little bit about your age last time. So do you want to talk about, I just love the line. I've repeated that many times over and you don't even know it.
Well, I've had other problems since then.
Oh, well, maybe we could
You got a problem when it was March 18th of 2022. And I talked, I did the Steps of Harbor group Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
I talked on a Zoom meeting Saturday at noon, and then I was talking at the 57th State Assembly Saturday night in Fort Worth. And I was having trouble swallowing. Having a terrible time swallowing. And so I was dehydrated. And that started on New Year's Eve. That New Year's Eve. And we were at a party, and I had one bite of rice and I couldn't swallow the rice. And I had dysphagia, which means my esophagus had collapsed.
Oh, no.
And so I made a talk. I talked 3 times in 2 days, and I was dehydrated. I hadn't been able to run because I was dehydrated. And I talked at that 57th Assembly, and I'm shaking hands with a bunch of the people that were there, and passed out. You don't want to pass out at an AA meeting.
Yeah.
And they called the ambulance. My wife was with me, thank heaven. And they took me to the emergency room, and they said, "We don't know why you passed out. We can't find anything." They ran every test in the book. And I said, "Because I'm dehydrated. That's why." And I have an appointment for the 20th, which is Monday, to have them fix my esophagus. And so I had where they put the balloon in there and blow your esophagus up.
Yeah.
I had your esophagus is normally 20 centimeters, and on the 20th, mine was 7. And the gastrologist said, "You can't swallow water at 7." And so that's when they every 2 weeks I'd go in for outpatient surgery. They'd blow my esophagus up till they finally got up to 18. So that's just one of those things that happens. And it's caused by acid reflux. It happens by one of several causes. It can happen by a stroke, a heart attack, or acid reflux. And a lot of alcoholics have acid reflux because we drank so much and it messed up our esophagus and our stomach. And so a lot of Dickens has that problem. A lot of people have that problem if
Yeah.
you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And so that was my problem, and now I'm fine. But that was the problem back then. Back when you're talking about
Yeah.
was the other end.
Yeah, but-
when I was having to go to the bathroom like 5 times a night and all that other stuff, and I had surgery on my prostate, and then I got I was just perfect. Didn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, and so the line you used, once again, you said Danny told you that after that surgery is over, you'll be able to
Knock the bark off a tree. He told me he could. I still don't believe him. Danny has a sense of lying a little bit, you know. You know how he lies. He and I were roommates off and on for every time he'd get divorced, he'd move in with me. Which was quite often. In fact, I had to forbid him to come hear me talk because he went through a period there where every time I talked, he'd come hear me and then he'd marry someone for the group. I swear to God, it happened. I was at the glass house. He came with me to talk. 2 weeks later, he had married the gal from the glass house. That thing lasted 6 weeks, and then he got divorced. And then next month I was speaking in Garland. He came to hear me in Garland. Married that gal from Garland. So I said, "You can no longer come hear me talk anymore, Danny. You can't hear me talk anymore. You marry the people." So, you're one of my best friends. I love him to death. I'd do anything for Danny. I really would. Danny B and Bob R are two of my favorite, best people. So.
And I said I wanted to come video you trying to knock the bark off the tree.
Yeah. Now we're going to do that.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about real quickly is I remember back in 2020 we were talking, and this is kind of back toward the beginning of this the podcast, and because of COVID, everything is shut down, and you're used to giving talks in to all kinds of conferences across the nation, but that stopped.
Yeah,
and you would go on the Zoom meetings, but I remember you saying, it wasn't the same. It wasn't, I mean, do you have any kind of before, after COVID kind of thoughts now?
The last, Don Majors, he's passed on now.
Yeah.
Don, he and I spoke at the last conference before COVID shut everything down. It was in Tennessee. No, excuse me. Louisiana. We were in Louisiana. It was a great conference.
Mm-hmm.
And Don I was 68 at the time. Don was like 73, my age probably. And between the two of us, we had somewhere between 10 and 12 marriages. Depends how you count them. That's what Don said. And so Don spoke Friday night. I was going to speak Saturday night. And Saturday afternoon, they asked us. Now, keep in mind, Don's got between the two of us, we got somewhere between 8 and 10 marriages. He's 73. I'm 68. They asked us to do a workshop on relationships. Only in AA do you get that. Only in AA. And we did a good job, by the way. That was the last conference before they shut everything down. They shut everything down the next week. And then it was a couple years. And the thing, I think Zoom was great at the time. Right now, I think we need to get back together. If we don't gather, we will scatter. And by the way, there were some things about Zoom that were wonderful. There were some things about Zoom that I think needed to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that they had some large Zoom meetings. I spoke at a couple of them where they would have, thousands of people online, and they would be donating money to.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Bob D telling me that this one place, he said, I know they gathered $50,000. Nobody knows where that money went.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go to any other group.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were some things about Zoom that could have been done, but it saved a lot of lives.
Right.
I think it was wonderful at the time, but now I think we need to come back.
Right.
and we need to. It's kind of like they say, those that are still at home working from home, come back to the office,
Right.
come back to the meeting,
Right.
and there's something about when you don't need. Now, if you're sick, I attend North Star in Plano. And they have a hybrid meeting where they have the big screen TV on the ward, and there's usually about 4 or 5 people at the Zoom meeting. It's a discussion meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a couple there that are sick and can't get out, and it's
Right.
perfect for them.
Right.
But I think that if you can get out to the meeting, you need to get out to the meeting. You need to get out with the fellowship and be with other people. And that's my personal opinion.
Right. Yeah. It never really, I mean, I'm thankful for all the online, it did help to bring us out into the 21st century, so to speak, Alcoholics Anonymous, and make all that available. I just never got the same sort of, just that feeling of release online that I'm able to get in person. And I guess different people are different ways.
Yeah.
But it never really hit the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think I still get a lot of calls, and I'm sorry, I just don't have. I think there's better ways to go than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I will go anywhere in the world they want me to go, and work with another alcoholic anytime they want me to do that. But I think that Zoom still has a place,
mm-hmm, right.
but not as a primary source, unless you can't get out to the
right.
meeting.
That's it exactly. Man, God forbid I'm ever.
Oh, I know.
On a,
I know.
On a bed and I can't get away, and I need some sort of connection, and I would be very, very grateful for that. And people, I don't know if everybody knows this, but you are a circuit speaker, I guess is what they call them now, right? And they have for years. And you have been to, gosh, I would imagine 1,000 different conferences over your. What's the, for people, by the way, there are always people that go, I want to be a circuit speaker or whatever,
You don't want to be a circuit.
Well, there's upsides and downsides to that. What has been your, I mean, when people come to you and say, hey, I want to be a circuit speaker, how do I get into that? And I mean, what do you tell them?
Well, I don't know. It used to be, I don't know how it is today. It used to be the tapers that dictated who spoke.
Right.
Because what they would do is the conference would say to whoever was taping the conference, send me, because they would tape, probably every weekend somewhere. They would say, send me your top 15 speakers you've heard this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd send them 15 tapes, and they would pass it around to their speaker committee, and they would decide the 6 or 7 they wanted to have come speak based on those tapes.
Yeah.
So the tapers really drove the
mm-hmm.
who spoke.
And the tapers kind of had a vested interest because they wanted to be able to sell tapes as well, right?
That was the downside of it.
Yeah.
Because they always sold the tapes that sold the most. And they may not be the best speaker. They may just been the most entertaining,
mm-hmm.
But anyway, it is. I'm also convinced that there's no talk that goes unheard in AA. Now, I will tell you the way I got started, which was I was 4 years sober, and it was Lone Star weekend. Lone Star Roundup was in Dallas, Texas. It's always the 3rd weekend of August. And when I moved here in 83, I was when I did Lone Star, my sponsor took me down here, and I was an usher at Lone Star. And at that time, there were about 600 people attend that conference, and then it grew to be about 4,000 over the years, and then I moved from hotel to hotel. And I would love to go on Friday night, and then I'd go in the office on Saturday, and then I'd go Saturday night and Sunday. And so I went to the meeting Friday night. Saturday, I go into the office, and I get a phone call from a guy named Buddy Ross. Now, you may not know Buddy Ross. Mm-hmm. Beverly Ross was his wife. Beverly was a big-time Al-Anon speaker.
Yeah.
Buddy taped everything. He was a taper. And he had taped me doing the steps at the Glass House. And so I'm at my office, and Buddy Ross calls me. And I said, buddy, what are you doing calling me at the office? And he said, well, you need to go home and get your bag packed because you're coming out here. Your plane leaves at 12:30. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, you're coming out here to Odessa to speak tonight at our conference. I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yeah, you are. He said, well, you need to come out here and speak. And I got your plane ticket on Southwest. And I said, I don't know where Odessa is. You don't need to. The airplane pilot knows where to go. Be there, and he'll bring you out here. So I said, what's wrong? He said, well, the guy we had speaking out here is canceled. He couldn't get out of Chicago because of the storm. So you need to come out here and speak tonight. We're stuck. I said, okay. I said, I've never spoken at a conference. You don't need to worry about it. You're going to do fine. So I drove out. I flew out there. Lynn Wilder, all these guys have passed on, and Chuck Chamberlain's widow was speaking, the Al-Anon speaker.
What's her name?
I can't remember her name now.
Yeah, Elise or
no.
Anyway, go ahead.
So I'm out there, and I get out there, and I find out that I'm filling in for Dr. Paul, who's been 40 years sober. His stories in the big book. He's got the famous line about your
acceptance.
Acceptance is the solution to all your problems, right? And so we got all these people, 700 people coming to hear Dr. Paul speak with 40 years sober, and they get John A. with 4. And I thought, you got to be kidding me, And I went and talked, and it was as good as I just prayed a lot, and I went out there and made my talk. And Lynn Wilder came up and was very complimentary and just said, you're going to be around a long time, buddy. Where are you going to go next? And I said, I'm going back to Dallas.
Yeah.
And he said, no, where are you talking? I said, well, I've got to speak at the hospital.
Yeah. Like this
and I was. Anyway, what happened was this was the best thing that happened to me, because I came back, and back then, even this was like in 85, 86, and they were trying to have they were trying to get a speaker meeting put out by the AA, general office.
Uh-huh.
And so they were going to have, they set up, they're going to have the first speaker meeting. They wanted to make it Sunday afternoon, so it wouldn't interfere with anybody else's meeting. And they're the other group's meeting. And they called me and asked me, will you kick it off to be the speaker? And I said, yeah, I'd be very happy to do that, and humbled by that invite. Well, when August came, I realized, well, this is a Lone Star Roundup weekend. You want to kick off this speaker meeting Sunday afternoon after they've had the best speakers in the world at Lone Star Roundup speaking all weekend. I called him. I said, you realize that's Lone Star Roundup. Nobody's going to come. They said, oh, we didn't. You're right. It is. Let me get back to you. They called me. I said, we've already advertised it, published, sent out the flyers. We got to have the meeting. So I fly back from this conference I spoke at in Odessa, drove from the airport over to, it was held at the hospital for Shriners Club.
Mm-hmm.
And walked in. I found it. They had this huge meeting. It was a stage. It was a conference seating. They had all these. They would have seated 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
This full stage. And one guy back there making coffee, and I went back there and I said, nobody's going to come. He said, well, we've advertised. They'll come. And I said, okay. So 2 people came. And I said, well, let's just have a discussion meeting.
Yeah.
He said, no, we've advertised it as a speaker meeting. You have to speak. I said, well, I'll just have him come down and sit. No, you got to speak from the podium. So I'm standing at the podium, and I got one guy on the right-hand side, one guy on the left-hand side. The guy making coffee left. And I went back to pray. This is after I was so pumped up with 700 people I spoke to Saturday night. I'm back there praying in the men's room. And it was one of the most spiritual experiences of my life, because I could hear a voice tell me, John, if you can't speak to these 2, you have no business speaking to 1,000.
That's right. Yeah.
And I said, thank you, God, you're right. And I humbled myself and went out there, and I gave it the best shot I could, made the best talk I could possibly give. And I've never forgot that. So I don't ever ask now when they invite me to a conference, when am I speaking? how big's your conference? I've got, many times I've canceled, a conference that'll have a large conference
Yeah.
because I've already committed to a group of 200 or 100,
Yeah.
and so, but I go to the first group. I don't ask how big's your conference. Now you kind of know, but
Yeah.
and I've been around a lot of them, and they change a lot. They change a lot. So I just go when they want me to go, and I don't ask when am I speaking. I don't ask how big is the conference. I just go, and whatever they want me to do, I'm there to do. And
What's the travel been like for you? Like, in other words, does it wear you down? Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy the social part of it? There's a lot of speakers, as you know, are they're they're good at giving a talk, but they don't necessarily like to do all the, glad handing and all that kind of stuff.
okay, I learned by, and it still haunts me to this day. And this happened about probably 35 years ago. I was at a little place in Indiana, and I was staying at a hotel, a motel, and they'd pick me up and we would drive down to the where the conference was being held. It was usually being held at an armory, National Armory, or something like that. Some of those conferences were that way. So I stayed at this hotel. I drove down to this armory, and I was going to speak Saturday night. And Saturday morning, we were there Friday night. Saturday morning, this couple came up to me and introduced themselves and said, "Man, we've been dying to see you. We got your tape, when you were somewhere, and we drove down here. They drove 400 miles, and to hear you tonight." And I said, "Well, great." I said, "I'm thank you for coming." And they said, "Listen, we're gonna go. Can we buy you lunch?" And the committee wanted to take me to lunch. And I said, well, I've got to go with the committee to go lunch. And the expression on their face, to this day, it was just like, and I have never forgot that. And I walked over there and I told them, I got to the car, I said, you guys go without me. And I ran down to yell at this couple that got in their car and they're driving away, to yell at them. I was going to go with them, and they drove off. I couldn't get them stopped. And that's the last I saw them. And they probably drove back. I don't know where they weren't there that night. And it was so, I thought, man, I cannot do that. It's a gift that they were a real gift to me. And I walked away from that gift, And so, now if somebody wants to talk to me, I'm all in, because I don't want to have that expression in the face ever again. See, you learn by mistakes. I've, like I said, most of what I share is what not to do. Because I've done this deal all wrong. And so I will not. If somebody wants to talk to me, I'll talk to them. I'll never forget. Well, we're getting off on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I was. They have in Nashville. They have a conference over a 4th of July weekend, and I've spoke there a couple times. And I was the second time I was up there. It had been 10 years since I was there. And I checked in. I was going up to my room, and these two guys came up to me, and they had these manila envelopes, and they said, "Hey, John, can we talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So we went into this little room, and the guy said, "John," he said, 10 years ago you were here." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I was brand new sober, and I was living in my truck, and I'd heard your talk about you living in your car, and so I was really pumped up by that. So I was in the hospitality room eating, because I had nothing to eat. And so they had all the treats and stuff in there and coffee in there, and it was warm. And so I was in the hospitality, but it was about midnight. And you came in. You'd been down to the dance. You came walking in, and you went off on a tangent. You were ranting and raving about, we don't know how to 12-step anymore. I don't know what we're doing. We don't teach people how to walk drunk sober, and that's our fault. All we do now is take them to the treatment center, and that's got to stop. We need to stop now. And you ran and raved for about 10 minutes about that. Got your coffee, and then you walked out. I'm just sitting there thinking, gee, many creepers. What's under his saddle, And so he said, next day I went to my sponsor, and I said, told him what you did. My sponsor said, yeah, he's right. I hadn't thought about that, but I haven't taught my people how to walk a drunk sober. So we formed there were 8 of us at the time, and we each put in $20. They put in $20 for me because I didn't have 20. And we signed up for 2-hour blocks. And we put our name in at the AA general service that if somebody called and was drunk, to call us, and we'll go take them and walk them sober. And we're not taking them to treatment center. We're going to take them to a hotel, and we'll stay with them until they get through this. And he said, in this folder, he said, we have 146 people in the past 10 years that we've picked up and taken and walked sober.
Wow.
You know? And he said, not all of them are sober. There's only like 6 that we know of those 142. But, you know, all 8 of us stayed sober.
Right.
And I started laughing because I said, I remember what happened that night. I remember why I was in such a tither. They said, why? I said, because I said I was going to Trinity group at 6:00, and I'd get there about 5:45 to 6, 5:30, and I got my coffee. I'm sitting there. There were 6 of us sitting around at the table, just BS and talking, waiting for the group to come and get started with the meeting. And the secretary came out about 20 to 6 and said, hey, there's a guy here drunk that thinks he's going into the DTs, and he wants some help. Who wants to take this 12-step call? And I'm sitting there, and nobody moved. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And I raised my hand and said, I'm going, and you're going to go with me. And I pointed to one of the guys and said, I don't know how to do that. I said, you're coming with me. We're going to find out. And so we went and made a 12-step call on this guy. And it dawned on me that it's not because they didn't want to be of help, but they didn't know what to do if a guy went into the DTs.
Yeah.
Nobody had taught them. They were just we'd become a taxi service for the treatment centers.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching all my guys then to keep a bottle of vodka in your car, you know, and you dilute the vodka, you give them a shot of vodka, and then you pour water back in the bottle, and then you keep giving them a bottle and add it filled up with water every time you do it. Pretty soon they're drinking straight water, and you taper them down so they don't have the DTs. And if they throw a fit, you know, you don't hold them down, you know, you just put pillows around them so they don't bang the walls and all that stuff. So I said, I was just upset that those guys didn't know how to do that. It was our fault. Those that went before them, it was our fault because we didn't teach people how to do that anymore. And he said, well, that makes sense. And I said, so, and he said, well, we've been doing it now. Now there's, by the way, he said, now we've got like 60 people in our group that have volunteered to be in the group now. And we're just going gangbusters on that. And we walk them sober. And my wife started a group of women, and so they're walking them sober now. And so I thought, you know, that's something that we lose track of what, and there's nothing. The way they used to do it is the way to do it. You know, maybe they need treatment, maybe they don't. But so that's what I learned on that.
So, and that makes me think about, like, God forbid you should pass tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not going. I'm in good health.
And I'm not saying you are, but you know, you have. I mean, you've impacted thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people.
Well,
do you think about, I don't know, legacy? Do you think about, or do you just keep kind of pushing on?
And I'll tell you why I don't. Probably the number one guy or person, man or woman, doesn't matter, the number one person that had a bigger impact on multitudes, maybe millions, has been Clancy.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I loved Clancy. He was always nice to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we were many times shared the podium. And I was talking to Bob D. We're very, very good friends.
He's out in Vegas, right?
Yes.
Bob D? Yeah.
And he said the saddest thing in the world is that when Clancy passed, he was in the hospital during COVID, and he died alone. Nobody could be with him. Thousands of people wanted to come. Couldn't do it. They wouldn't let him in, you know? And I thought, of all the people in the world that impacted more people than probably Chuck Chamberlain, Clancy's probably, and whether you liked him or not, didn't matter. He had a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I learned from him not to ask, because I'll tell you this: Bob Darrell and I first spoke together. I was 40 years old, and it was a young people's conference. The reason I remember that is because they wouldn't let you speak if you were over 40, and they asked me how old I am. And so it was in Oklahoma State Young People's Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob and I became good friends up there. He was speaking, I was speaking, and we just over the years, we've been very good friends. And I speak at State Line every few years, and that's his conference there in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me to speak. They had a conference, not in Las Vegas. It was there was a tri-state conference, and it was held down in the tip in a small town on the river. So you had Arizona, California, and Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
And it was held in a big casino there. And he called and said, well, why don't you come speak Saturday night? And I said, I'll speak whenever you want me to. So he said, fine. So I went out there and got out there. He picked me up I drove down. I flew into Vegas, and then we drove down there. He met me at the hotel. And he said, John, I got to tell you something. I said, okay. He said, you're not speaking Saturday night. And I said, that's fine. He said, well, what happens is Saturday night will have a big house no matter who speaks. And I said, yeah. And he said, and Clancy will have a big audience no matter what time he speaks.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, we'll have him speak Saturday morning at 10. Place will be packed. We'll have you speak Saturday night after the banquet at 8, and it'll be packed. We'll have 2 packed meetings. And he said, I got to tell you, Clancy called me Wednesday and said, when do you have me? I'm looking at the program. When do you have me speaking? So I got you speaking Saturday morning. He said, you got the wrong guy, and hung up. So I called him back and said, no, we're moving you to Saturday. So he was speaking Saturday night. I spoke at 10 o'clock. That's the last time I ever spoke at Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. But that's fine. I mean, I don't care. I don't care at all. But Clancy liked to, and he was always so nice to me. He never, because I had the worst job ever, and that was I had to introduce him at the Texas State Convention.
Yeah.
No matter what you do with Clancy, he's going to rib you.
Right.
If you talk too long in the introduction, he'll say, well, I don't have any time to talk now. You took all my time. And if you don't give him the right amount of time and feather his nest, then he'll say, that was the worst introduction I've ever had. So, but I introduced him there to Texas State. It was fine. He was nice to me. He didn't say anything. He was nice to me. So I love Clancy, but he died alone. And so I think about the legacy you pass on. You hope you help somebody else. And that's always my prayer before I talk is that be free from the bondage of self. I might not seek to build up myself, but to glorify thy name and the things that hast done for me. And I pray that I might be able to help. I know that I'm powerless and that I can do nothing, but with you all things are possible. I pray that I can help one other human being tonight. And that's all I want to do is help one other human being. And so that's my prayer. And if I can help one other human being, I'm not too grandiose. I'm not thinking I'm going to save the world. I'm a drunk. If I can save one other guy, help one other guy not drink that day, then that's good. Because that's the miracle. That's the miracle right there. And we live on those miracles. We want to talk about step 2. Step 2 is it's not very complicated. We complicate the thing. I went to my sponsor and I said to him, how do you take step 2? And he said, we found it best if you'll come to believe that a power greater than yourself will restore you to sanity. I said, I know that's what the step says, but how do you do that? And he smoked a cigarette. This is Don in Reno. He said, John, we've just found it best if you'll come to believe that a power greater than yourself will restore you to sanity. And he said, just read because I told him, I said, listen, I was at the lunch bunch group, and a gal said her sponsor had her write down on a piece of paper all the characteristics of the God she had. The God she had was a judgmental God, a scorekeeping God, a vengeful God. And then write down on a piece of paper all the characteristics of God she wanted. The God she wanted was all loving, all omnipotent, all powerful, all forgiving, all merciful. That's the kind of God she wanted. Take the old God, the vengeful God, and burn him up. Then you got your new God. Should I do that? It was. You got nothing to do this afternoon. Won't hurt. But we really found it best if you'll come to believe that a power greater than yourself will restore you to sanity. And he said, see, John, just read the dark spots. Don't read between the lines. This isn't hard stuff. Step 2 is an invitation. See, if I see an ad in the newspaper for a store, you know, and it says, come and save. And I go down to that store and I say, what are you doing down here? And they say, well, we got to sell and I came down to save. Step 2 is an invitation for you to come to AA to believe that a power greater than yourself will restore you to sanity. It's an invitation for you to come. See, what happens if you come to AA, the first thing that'll happen is you'll hear things you hope are true. See, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's what the Carpenter's Big Book says faith is. Step 2 is a faith step. The first thing that'll happen, you'll hear things you hope are true. Substance, you sit around a table, somebody's telling what God did for them, how they didn't drink, how God solved that problem, and you think, man, I hope that's true. Hope he'll do that for me. If you stick around long enough, you'll see evidence that they are. Think what we get to see in AA, the evidence we get to see. See, I've never seen God. I've seen evidence in you. You know, think how we get here. Guy crawls in the crack in the door, got nothing. Got no job, no money, no place to live. Somebody gives him a place to stay. He gets a job, gets back to work, and pretty soon in a few months, his whole life's put back together. Incredible how fast we recuperate. We recover from this seamless state of endless torture, you know? Evidence. I can see God working in your life a lot quicker than I can see him working in mine.
Yeah.
I don't see him doing much in mine at all. Evidence of things not seen. What happens when you quit going to meeting? You go nuts. You go to a meeting, you're okay. You ever do that? You ever call your sponsor, say, I need to talk to you. I got a real problem. Tell you what, meet me at the meeting. We'll talk after the meeting. You go to the meeting. After the meeting, you come up. Sponsor says, what's going on? Nothing. Why?
Right.
Well, you call me. You were nuts. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. If I remember, I'll call you later. What happened? You're restored to sanity. You go to a meeting, you're okay. You don't go to a meeting, you go nuts. You know? And we don't know what happens in the meeting. We don't have a clue what went on in the meeting. I can guarantee you, 10 minutes after you leave the meeting, you won't know what happened.
Right.
You don't remember what the topic was, what they talked about. I don't know.
Right.
You know? But it always happens in the meeting. You don't go to a meeting, you go nuts. You go to a meeting, you're okay. So you want to take step 2 and be restored to sanity, just go to a meeting.
Right.
And you're okay. You don't go to a meeting long enough, you go nuts and you drink. So you want to take step 2, be restored to sanity. Step 2 is an invitation for you to come to AA to believe that a power greater than yourself will restore your sanity. And so then the miracles start to happen.